To prepare your Swiss roll tin for your 2-colour Swiss roll, the first thing that you're going to need is a template that's going to allow you to pipe the decoration onto your cake. You need a little bit of melted butter or margarine, and the first thing that you need to do is to stick your template to the bottom of your tin. This tin is a little bit deep for a Swiss roll, but it's the only one that I have at home. So I'm just going to place my template, which I want to help me pipe, in the bottom of the tin. Now, the paper absorbs a little bit of the grease, but it doesn't matter because you can still clearly see the snowflake design. You then need a full-size piece of paper to put on top of this to stop your cake from sticking. And because you are making a Swiss roll, there's no fat in this sponge, so what you need to do is to grease or line not only the bottom of the tin but up the sides as well. And the easiest way to do that is to put your paper on the tin and then to scrunch into the 4 corners. Just press down with your fingers so that your paper is in the 4 corners of the tin. If you then lift your paper up, you can cut into your 4 corners, which will make it much easier to fit your paper in a moment when we've greased the tin. So I'm just going to cut into the 4 corners of the tin like that, and that should now fit in the tin. You need to grease with some melted butter or margarine, and you cannot do this with oil because your cake mixture is so light. We actually need the cake to sit right down to the bottom of the tin. If you use oil, the greaseproof paper doesn't actually stick to the tin. So grease the tin and then put your paper back in and scrunch into the corners, and where you've cut around those corners you should be able to give yourself a nice smooth edge, so that when your cake is cooking the paper will not cook into the cake. It sits nice and neatly in the bottom of your tin and should not cook into your cake. And despite the fact that this is good greaseproof paper, I'm just going to grease the greaseproof paper as well, because I do not want my Swiss roll to be sticking to the paper when I'm trying to turn it out. If it sticks to the paper, it can tear and you won't then be able to roll it successfully. So I'm just going to grease the edges and the base of that tin. I can still see the design that I'm going to pipe, but my tin is now prepared and ready. The mixture to make the snowflake design in the 2-colour meringue is very easy to make. The first thing that you need to do is to separate an egg, and we only need the egg white. If you have trouble separating eggs, one of the easiest ways that I've found to do it is to break your egg onto a plate, hold it quite close, don't hold it up here because you've more chance of the egg yolk splitting. So break your egg onto a plate and then use something small like an egg cup and tip the egg white into the bowl that you want, but while you're tipping you just put the egg cup really close to the egg white, tip the plate up, and what should happen, hopefully, is that you catch your egg yolk in the egg cup and you just end up with the white in the bowl. So into my egg white I've added 30 grams of butter, and I have 40 grams of plain flour and 25 grams of caster sugar, and it can all go in together, and you just need to mix this and I tend to mix this with a fork because I find it easier to break up the batter. But what you want to make is a really nice smooth paste. And it doesn't take long to mix up and give you a smooth paste. You then need to put your mixture into a piping bag. Having made the mixture for our 2-colour Swiss roll for the pattern, you now need to get that into a piping bag. If you find it difficult to hold a piping bag in your hand like that and scoop the mixture in to the top of the bag, if you find that you cannot manage that, then the easiest thing to do is to get a measuring jug or something similar, put your piping bag over the top of the jug and then scoop your mixture in. So scoop your mixture into the jug, and you need to try and get all of this mixture into the piping bag. So I want all of that in there. Just wash my hands. And then I'm going to pipe this design into the bottom of my Swiss roll tin. So, same as you would normally do for piping, push the mixture down towards the bottom of your bag. Remember to hold your piping bag here between your finger and your thumbs and twist the bag so that when you've snipped the end off, the mixture has got to come out here and it cannot come out the top. You only need to take a small amount off the end of the bag because you don't want this mixture to come out too thick. So I'm just going to see how thick it is. That's quite a small hole, but it's giving me a reasonably thick line. So I'm just going to do a couple of these following the design on the paper. I'm just going to pipe one of my snowflakes. Oh, missed a dot. So I have one of my snowflakes piped in place. The mixture is sitting a little bit proud on some of them. If you damp your finger first and just touch it, you'll be able to push that down, but it shouldn't matter too much. You can pipe as many snowflakes on there as you like, but I would make sure that you have some on either end of the rose, because when you roll it up, we want to be able to see the snowflakes. When you've finished piping all of your design into the tin, it's a good idea to put it into a fridge or a freezer to give it a chance to really firm up. With COVID restrictions in place, if you're doing this at school, you wouldn't be able to move out of your unit to put it into a fridge or a freezer, so you will just have to leave it on your worktop for a little while you then prepare the rest of your mixture. For the Swiss roll mixture for your Swiss roll, you need to make sure that you have everything in place before you start. So a little jug with some water and a spoon. You need to put your sugar in a large mixing bowl, and then I'm just going to add 3 eggs. There's 90 grams of sugar in this bowl, and I need to put in 3 whole eggs to make the Swiss roll. What's really important is that it's only the eggs and sugar that go into your bowl to start with. Your flour and cocoa need to be sieved onto a plate, and the reason that you sieve the flour and cocoa is to make sure that they're evenly mixed. This is a whisked mixture, which means the air that you put in here should be the main raising agent. So I have 75 grams of flour and 15 grams of cocoa in here, and I just want to sieve them together to start with. So don't put your sieve in the sink because you're going to need that again in a minute. So just move the flour and the cocoa out of the way, and then you can start whisking. So my tin is already prepared because I've piped the snowflake design in it, so I don't have to worry about that. My flour and cocoa are on a plate, I've got my jug of water, and then just the eggs and sugar need to be whisked. And you are going to whisk these until they can hold a trail. It's going to take 5 to 10 minutes to whisk these eggs up until they are thick enough to hold a trail. You need to do it with your mixer on the highest speed and keep your beater upright in the bowl. When your eggs and sugar are whisked enough, and this is still just my eggs and sugar in this bowl, you should be able to see what's called a trail on the top of your mixture for a slow count of 3. That means if I lift the beaters up and let the mixture fall back on top of the bowl, I should be able to count 1, 2, 3 and still see where the mixture has fallen into the bowl. It's really important that you don't rush this stage, because if you don't whisk enough air into that mixture, the bubbles in your Swiss roll, the air in your holes in your Swiss roll will be very small and your mixture will come out quite tough. So to help this rise a little bit more, I am just going to tip 1 tablespoon of water down the side of my bowl, and then because I've just spent all that time whisking the air into this mixture, I don't really want to just dump my flour and cocoa on the top and have it completely knock out a load of air. So I'm just going to sieve that back over the top so that it just sits gently, and then using a tablespoon you need to fold this mixture in. So go to the bottom of the bowl and, turning the spoon over, fold your mixture in. Turn your bowl as you are doing this, and every so often cut through your mixture with a figure of 8 pattern. Figure of 8, noughts and crosses pattern. Just make sure that you are not just folding from the outside and leaving yourself a big lump of flour in the middle. The more you fold this mixture in, the more air is knocked out of it. So as soon as you think your mixture is even in colour and you cannot see any lumps of flour anywhere, you need to stop, and your mixture should still look quite moussey on the top. And as soon as that is ready, you need to pour it into your prepared Swiss roll tin. So just gently let the mixture fall into your Swiss roll tin. If you cover the pattern that you've piped in the middle first, and then just allow the mixture to spread itself to the edges of your tin. So as much of the mixture as you can out of your tin. If you're going to spread this yourself, you need to be really careful, because every time you touch the mixture, again, you're going to knock some of the air out. Or what you can do is very carefully tip your mixture into the 4 corners of your tin. If you tip your mixture, you must remember to tip it back again so that you don't end up with a wedge shaped Swiss roll. So just shake it level again, and then that will go in the oven for 12 to 14 minutes. It's a hot oven, 200 degrees, gas mark 6. While your Swiss roll is in the oven, you've got to get ready to roll it up as soon as it comes out. You can't leave a Swiss roll to cool and then roll it up because it will crack. So before you start your washing up, prepare your worktop for the Swiss roll coming back out of the oven. So you're going to need a clean, dry worktop. You're going to need more greaseproof paper. So I'm just going to dry my worktop off for a minute with a bit of paper towel. You need 2 whole sheets or 2 sheets of greaseproof paper, the same size as you use to line your tin, and one a little bit smaller. And one of the sheets of greaseproof paper you just need to add a light dusting of caster sugar to. So I'm just going to put a light dusting of caster sugar over that one. I'm going to leave the caster sugar out, but my work area is now prepared for the Swiss roll to come out of the oven. Now I can go and get my washing up done while I'm waiting for it to cook. When your Swiss roll is cooked, you need to work quickly. So you can tell that it's cooked because this one is slightly shrunk away from the edge. Sometimes they pull the paper in. If you touch it very gently, it springs back. The first thing that you've got to do, because you can only roll these while they're hot, is flip it up and turn it out onto your sugared paper. And because this is well greased, my paper's just lifting off. If your paper doesn't lift off, you need to loosen it around the edges first. Then take off that bit of paper and you should be able to see your 2-colour design on your Swiss roll. What I would do then is very gently sprinkle this with a tiny little bit more sugar, because I need to turn this over again, and the sugar will help it stop sticking to another piece of greaseproof paper. So I need to very carefully but quickly flip this over, otherwise when I roll it up, the snowflakes will be on the inside and you won't be able to see them. You can see around the edges of the Swiss roll, let's just stop that from curling a bit, around the edges of the Swiss roll that the edge is a little bit darker and it feels a bit crispy. You need to cut, and it is cut, a small amount off all 4 edges of your Swiss roll as quickly as you can. No more than 1 centimetre. I'm only taking about ½ centimetre off along each of the 4 edges. If you forget to do this, what happens is, as you try to roll your Swiss roll, it cracks. It can't actually roll along the edges, and just along the top edge as well, so that the Swiss roll is hopefully going to roll and not split. You then need to mark about 1 centimetre in the edge closest to you. This is to help you start your rolling. Don't cut that all the way through. If this was a white Swiss roll, a vanilla one, what I would do is I would then put my filling on, if it was jam, and I would roll it up straight away with the jam inside. Because this is chocolate, the cocoa powder holds the heat for a little bit longer, and if I were to put my cream in this now, the cream would just melt. So I need to put my ½ piece of greaseproof paper right on that cut, and then you pick up your Swiss roll and you roll it. If you press down where that first mark is, what you need to do is be pulling with this hand and folding down with this hand, or making sure that your Swiss roll is actually rolling and not folding. We want it to roll all the way up. Once it gets started, it's easier. And when you get to the end, you need to wrap the paper around the Swiss roll to hold it in place. But hopefully, when you look in the end of your Swiss roll, you can see that we have actually got a roll. That needs to sit wrapped up until the Swiss roll is cool. So you've just then got to wait until your Swiss roll is cool. While you're waiting, you can whip your cream. I've got 125 mils of double cream in this bowl, and I've whipped it to soft peaks. So it will stand in peaks, but I haven't whipped it thick enough to be piped. Okay, the two colour Swiss roll is now completely cool, so I can unroll it carefully and add in my cream. So my cream is softly whipped, and I'm just going to do it on the paper to save making any more mess. So spread the cream into your Swiss roll. Take it nearly to the edges, but not quite up to the edges. And at this end, I'm just going to tuck a little bit of cream under that first roll. I just want to make sure that there is some cream in the middle of the Swiss roll. It doesn't have to be a particularly thick layer, because when you roll it up, it is going to get squashed a little bit towards the edges. So that will be enough. And then starting at this end, carefully roll your Swiss roll up again. And you can use the paper to help you if it gets stuck, but what you're hoping for is a Swiss roll where you can see your pattern on the outside, and if you turn it around you can actually see that it has rolled and not been folded. If you stand your Swiss roll with the edge there, it will help to stop it unrolling, and it will help keep it flat and stable. If you want to present this and make it look a little bit neater, what you could do is change the dish that you put it on. So again, I have a piece of slate here, and I could put a slice of the Swiss roll on the slate. It would mean that I wouldn't necessarily get the whole effect. However, one slice, sometimes for your exam and your presentation, it's a good idea to cut into your food, because if I move that slice, you can now see that the Swiss roll has a perfect round in it. So I could move that up, put the individual slice of Swiss roll there. What I'd like to do is serve this on the slate. So I'm going to put an individual slice of Swiss roll on the slate, but if I just put this on the slate like that, it doesn't look necessarily particularly interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move that off for a moment, and I am going to put a spoon and a fork at this end of the slate. Yeah, that way over. And I'm just going to use a little bit of icing sugar in my sieve and just sieve over the top. So it doesn't need loads of icing sugar, but it does work a bit better if you put it through a sieve. My sieve is not particularly fine, but if I sieve this over the top, came out a bit fast there. When I move these off carefully, I have just about got a spoon and fork at that end. I can then put my slice of Swiss roll down, and I've got a few frozen raspberries that I could add to the plate as well. If those had defrosted a little bit, it would look a bit better, but if I can tip that up, you can see just about I have the spoon and the fork motif. The spoon is definitely clearer than the fork, but I have the motif, Swiss roll and some raspberries. That's on a white plate. If I've only got a dark plate, I can do something very similar, but because this plate is white, what I'm going to do is use cocoa, which is fine as it's a chocolate cake. And this time, rather than allowing myself an uneven edge, what I really want to do is see if I can get a neat, sharp edge. So this time, as it's a white plate, same thing, a little bit of cocoa, and I'm just going to put my fork the other way up this time. So cocoa into my sieve, and I'm going to put them at a slight angle, and I am going to gently sieve some cocoa. And again, my sieve is quite coarse, so rather a lot came out in one go. But hopefully, if I move the paper, I've got more of a straight edge. And if I lift my fork up, you can just about see the fork. A finer sieve would be better, but I can then either put the whole Swiss roll on here, again with my slice, and I can add raspberries to make it look a little bit more interesting. I'm putting raspberries on both sides of that. But again, if I hold it up, it looks perhaps a little bit more interesting for presenting for the exam.